Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Esteemed FaceTime with Leaders, an initiative by World Development Corporation. I'm Vinu Anand at World Development Corporation. FaceTime with Leaders is a platform for industry titans to share their experiences, thoughts, ideas, and best practices in order to inspire one another and future leaders. In a nutshell, we attempt to encapsulate the multi-decadal learnings acquired by these industry leaders. We also hope that by conducting these FaceTime with Leaders interviews, we can bring together a global community of eminent personalities. By bringing together such visionaries on one platform, we hope to play a part in inspiring the lives of other leaders. Great learnings from great leaders undoubtedly assist everyone by identifying, nurturing, and using the trade secrets that are proven formulae for many. And this is what we aim for with these sessions by making them a gathering of industry stalwarts and a knowledge-sharing community. We have one such personage on FaceTime with Leaders with us today, Mr. Snehasis. He's a seasoned professional whose career journey has been nothing short of exemplary, possessing a wealth of experience and expertise in the realm of financial markets. He has made a lasting impact in the world of international finance. His extensive professional background and numerous accomplishments in the financial sector have truly set him apart as a remarkable figure in the industry. So much so that he has been honored with a lectureship at the Asian Institute of Management. That is, in the Robinson's Retail CFO Leadership Program on campus, an elective role in finance at the Indian Institute of Management, as well as lectureship in financial markets at the Seoul National University. He currently serves as an advisor and shareholder at Ai-Robotics, overseeing the development of autonomous mobility solutions. He is also director at Commerzbank and has been appointed as an Adjunct Faculty, Finance, Capital Markets and Derivatives, with the Asian Institute of Management, Manila. So, Mr. Das, our viewers would like to know in brief about your career journey so far.
Thank you, Venu, for your kind introduction. After graduating from IIT in chemical engineering, I joined as a factory engineer with Shaw and Company. It's a company which manufactures consumer goods in India and also consumable alcohol. I was working at their factory, which is near Kolkata, and I started my career there. It was quite interesting what we learned in engineering to find how it has been used in the factory setting. However, after a couple of months, you realize that being a factory engineer, you're doing the day-to-day maintenance job, or when the production gets somehow stopped, you're trying to figure out and then back to give the production back up. You're quite used to the same things again and again. Mm-hmm. So then that led me to realize that I want to do something more to enhance my career, to evolve myself, to learn more. Thus, 2 years at the factory, I tried to study for the business management exams. And thereafter, I was fortunate to get into the Asian Institute of Management, where I did a 2-year residential course on business management. At the Asian Institute of Management, while doing the business management course, I realized my interest in finance, especially on the quantitative aspect. I think my engineering background probably helped me in terms of being more quantitative. And that led to my interest in derivatives and options. And in my final semester, I took that subject to specialize. And thereafter, I came to Singapore, to look for a job in derivatives trading and risk management. So that was quite interesting, just taking a tourist visa to land up in Singapore and trying to cold call the banks, and then trying to sell myself in the sense that having graduated from a business management school to get into derivatives trading from engineering. I was fortunate enough at that time, a French bank called Credit Lyonnais has started its derivatives trading desk back in Singapore. That was back in 1998. So I was hired there as a derivatives trader. And over the span of next 3-4 years, I actually learned the basics of derivatives trading, risk management, and how to build the business for derivatives in Asia. It was interesting times because the derivatives business was nascent, and it just started flourishing in Asia. So I was there probably at the right time as markets in derivatives began developing in Asia. The derivatives business started primarily out of London back in the early 90s. In the early 2000s, it slowly encompassed a lot of Asian countries. During the late 90s, what we saw was a resurgence of the Asian economy. And that led to a lot of Asian companies doing much better when they are exporting goods and services to the West. And as they grew, they need to hedge their revenues which they get from the West, especially the US or the Europe. And that needs derivatives hedging. So from 1998 to 2002-3, we were building this, providing solutions to different corporate out of Asia, especially in Taiwan, in China, in Korea, Malaysia, Thailand, India as well. And markets were opening up to do more of derivatives because that actually created value for corporate clients. They're receiving revenues which are into the future, and derivatives provided a way to hedge that. I still remember coming to Mumbai to set up the desk when I was with the bank Credit Lyonnais, when the markets in Mumbai opened for derivatives trading in dollar against Indian rupee. Then what happened in 2004, we were merging with another French bank, which was called Agricole. And under the French government regulations, we needed to merge to become more efficient and to increase the productivity of the bank. So we became known as Callion, and we moved our desk from Singapore to Hong Kong. And thereafter, I became the main person in terms of managing the derivatives business out of Asia for the merged bank Callion. Then in 2005, I was approached by an American bank called Wachovia, which was later bought over by Wells Fargo. They approached me because they realized my expertise in building this business for Callion in most of the countries in Asia. And they wanted to do the same, as they did not have that business. They did have the business back in US, especially in US, with Canada, with South America, with Europe as well. However, they did not have that similar business out of Asia, whereas they had the relationship with all the Asian banks because they were the payment gateway for US dollars for most of the Asian banks, especially in Taiwan, in Chinese banks out of Hong Kong, Chinese banks out of Shanghai. So the relationship was there, and they needed somebody with the expertise to leverage that relationship and build the derivative business on top of it. So when I saw this opportunity, I found it quite interesting in the sense that I'll be reporting directly to the global management back in US. And also I got the free hand to do how I want to build the business. So I thought it was quite interesting. And at that young age, I was quite excited so I took the opportunity. So initially I started in Hong Kong, and I started more of a role, not only as a trader and risk manager, but also to develop the business. So I used to go with sales to the respective countries, and then we will meet the clients, and then we'll tell what we can do for them in terms of hedging their derivative needs. It's quite interesting because not only you traveled, but you also understood what the clients thought, what is their thinking process, and how you can actually add value to them. And that was where I realized how important it is, you as a bank, to communicate what you can do for the clients, what value you can add to the client so that his business is sustainable or his business increases. So that was a huge learning experience because I was independently doing what I think I best for the bank, best for the clients of the bank, and best for the relationship to grow from every perspective. I flew back to US and I stayed in US to understand the business also back in America, the business that so I went back to US and spent quite some time there to understand how they're doing the business in US, especially with South American clients, clients out of Canada, clients out of Europe. I stayed there for almost a year to understand the systems, how they are hedging, how they're actually projecting what they can do for the clients, and what the clients are doing in terms of hedging their own exposure. Understanding all these integrities, I came back to Hong Kong to basically replicate that and make it better for the bank's clients out of Asia. So I again started traveling to Taiwan, to Hong Kong, to meet the clients and tell them what we are good at, where we can add value to them. That was quite interesting. That taught me a lot. The more challenging part of that job was trying to make sure that our systems are in place. Because when you are having a business on derivatives, systems becomes an integral part of your risk. And if you have the proper systems, you will know your risk preferably much better than if you don't have the proper systems. So the systems was pretty archaic at that time, especially with this US bank. So we build everything from first principles, from the spreadsheets. And that also made me learn how important it is to start from the first principles, from the basic, and then build on top of that. And those 2 years actually gave me a foundational aspect on building derivatives business, which the previous 7 years, where all the systems were in place in the French bank, it showed that you can actually understand much better when there is no system and you start from scratch. So that was quite interesting for me in terms of my career as a derivatives trader, risk manager, and building the business for derivatives for a bank. That was back in 2007. And then I was approached by an ex-colleague who I used to work with back in Credit Lyonnais. He was the head of sales at that time. And he joined a French bank called Natixis, which is fairly medium-sized bank and getting bigger. And he was a head of capital markets. He joined in Singapore, and he wanted to build the same business. And he thought my experience will be helpful. And we had a very good relationship. So he thought that it will be good to have me. And after various discussions, I joined him. And I came back to Singapore back in 2007 and started building the business for Natixis. So it was quite interesting because they had the systems in place. They had the clients in place. So it was much easier compared to the challenges I faced back in Wachovia. In Natexis, we really built a business much bigger compared to what it was, both not only in Asia, but also the business out of Europe, which they wanted to do in Asia. So we had offices in Tokyo, in Taiwan, in Korea, in Hong Kong. And it was a very good time because at that time, the derivatives business was really flourishing. However, we did face the Asian, not only the global financial crisis at that time, 2008. But that gave us a lot of opportunity too, in terms of the volatility of the market. And we were, in terms of managing and developing and growing the business, we actually went much further because of that. And what the crisis did was it increased the uncertainty in the capital markets. And when there is increase in uncertainty, corporates want to hedge more. So as a result, the business for derivatives increased as a result of that. So those 4 years, we had pretty good business. And then we moved the desk back to Hong Kong because the business out of China was increasing. And we thought, if we are near China and we are stationed in Hong Kong, we can capture more business for the bank. So we moved to Hong Kong. And that was in 2011 when another ex-colleague of mine who used to, I to work with in Credit Lyonnais, and he became the global head with Commerzbank in Frankfurt. And he also wanted to do the same thing with Natexis. And he approached me. And after much discussions, I thought it was good for me to go back to Singapore and build the business for Commerzbank. And since 2011 summer, I had been managing and developing the derivatives business for Commerzbank. So that's in brief, more or less, my career so far in the last 25 years.
Wow, amazing journey, amazing. So, sir, coming to our next, you have held leadership positions in various prominent banks. Can you share a specific example of a significant challenge you faced in one of these roles and how you successfully overcame it?
Yeah, I think there are two visibly significant time when I thought it was exciting in terms of my career. Primarily, as I was telling you, it was back when the merger was happening between Credit Lyonnais and Credit Agricole. I was managing the Asian business for Credit Lyonnais, which is a much smaller bank compared to Agricole. Here in the merger, Agricole was a much bigger, and it was more of Agricole's decision. So I was a bit uncertain in terms of what will happen after the merger, a bit apprehensive because Agricole had a bigger business. They were the decision makers, and we were smaller. So ideally, I was a bit apprehensive in terms of what's gonna be the result of it. So what the merger happened back in 2003, late 2003, early 2004, and we were told that both the desk of Agricole and Lyonnais will remain for the next 3 to 6 months before they merge the business. So I was continuing doing what I did. Of course, I was more focused, more dedicated to make sure that we grow the business, we do whatever needs to be done. And then after 5 months, the desk got merged, and Agricole's desk was in Singapore. Our desk was in Hong Kong. And they merged and they made the desk back in Hong Kong, and they made me the head of the business, which was pretty interesting in the sense that it was, of course, I'm very happy with that. I thought I did a good job. That's why they made it. I was more dedicated. I was focused. But I will never know in the sense that what made them decide to make me the head coming from a smaller part of the bank merged business to become lead the bigger pie, a bigger business for the merged bank. So that was quite challenging, I remember, and quite significant, because that led me or gave me more confidence to build later on the business in Wachovia. And the second, which I was mentioning about, was when I was in Wachovia, when we had these issues with the system and trying to figure out from the first principles on the spreadsheets. So many a times our risk might be wrong because of wrong calculations on the spreadsheet. Those spreadsheets are not robust enough to calculate a lot of derivative risk, or rather we did not have those bells and whistles on top of what is needed. So we slowly developed. So it took us six months around to develop those and then come up, fine tune those spreadsheets to make sure our risk is right. So that was also a challenging and quite significant, and taught me how to build something from the first principles. So that was quite interesting. I wanted to share when you asked this question.
Wow. Lots to learn from you. So coming to our next, could you discuss your approach to educating clients on hedging derivatives and the importance of client education in the financial sector, especially in Asian markets?
Sure. So when I meet clients, what I understand is you have to really understand the client's business, and to really add value to the clients, you have to understand what kind of exposure they have. What is that they need to hedge? By understanding their business, by understanding that, you will understand what is their exposure. And when you understand the exposure, then you will know what they need to do to hedge that exposure. Each and every client, each and every business is different, even though it can be in the same industry, but it's different because how they do the business, who they are actually trying to serve in terms of their products, in terms of their services. So once you understand the client's business, then you tell them what you can do as a bank to add more value to their business. So what happens is, when I started with Wachovia, I was visiting the clients to tell them, okay, this is what we can do as a bank. Now, it does not matter what the bank has. What matters is how customized you can give your clients the service or the products which they need for their business to grow better. If their business goes better, then you will get more of your business. So as a result, it's more important to come from the basic principles in understanding your client, in telling them what you can do, how you can customize, and then provide them and execute for them. So we go and meet clients, we give them seminars, we teach them, we educate them. What are the different products that the bank has built in terms of providing that hedging solution? It can be an insurance, it can be a kind of a way in which their exposure is limited. Now, there are various products, innumerable products in derivatives. So the basic building blocks are called calls and puts. But with these building blocks, you can permute and combine them to build a whole range of structured products. Now, some may not be needed for the client, while some may be needed. So it is your job to make sure that you're providing the right solution, which is cost-effective and serves the purpose for the clients. And that is very important. So what we do is we go to the client, we give them the catalog of product, we explain them this product can do this, these are the risks of the product, this are what the product can do. And then the clients decide, okay, which product will be good for them. On top of that, we kind of discuss with them what are the negative aspects of the product. If the market goes against, then what will be the losses? Is the loss limited, or is the loss unlimited? So that's very important, to not only to educate, but also discuss with the client, even after the client chooses which product they want, to make sure that they really understand. Because what happened during the great financial crisis back in 2008, a lot of companies, corporates, hedged through banks, and they went bankrupt, not because of their business, but they became bankrupt because of their hedge. If you remember, during that time, during the crisis, the value of dollar increased massively against all the Asian crises or currencies. One example is Korea. Korea went from below 900 to almost 1,300 won per US dollars. A lot of Korean companies were hedging, they were exporters. So they had the revenues in US dollars. So they need to sell their US dollars back into Korean won because their cost is in Korean won. So they need to, on their balance sheet, everything, the cost is in Korean won. The revenue is coming from US. So they need to sell their US dollars. So they will go into a structure where they will sell US dollars and buy Korean won. Now, there are various structures to do that. A lot of corporates did some of the structures which were not needed. So which has some exotic element in it, where the structure can get live when dollar Korea goes higher, where Korea is actually depreciating. And that caused huge losses for those corporates. So much so that they got bankrupt. Not because of the business. The business was increasing tremendously. But on the hedge, they had so much exposure and liability that they could not actually meet their margin calls. So that's why it's very important to make the clients know what is the downside of each and every product. When they come to a bank to hedge, they are actually looking for an insurance. And you as a fiduciary, you have to give them that confidence and be transparent enough to tell them what is good for them. Because if that is good for them, it's good for everybody, because that creates a sustainable business for them. And a sustainable business for your client makes your business sustainable also. So it's a win-win situation. So that's very important. So that's where I think it's very important from a client perspective, from a bank's perspective, how you can make sure, educate, and be transparent with your clients so that they can get the best out of what you have to offer.
Thank you for your valuable inputs. So, how and when did you develop an interest in ESG and corporate governance?
You know, back in 2008, when I joined, just after I joined Natixis, moved from Hong Kong to Singapore, and we had a huge crisis, the great financial crisis. Bear Stearns collapsed, JP Morgan bought it, and then Lehman collapsed, and there was massive chaos in the financial markets, you know, and I was trading the markets, and I haven't seen such collapse or such volatility in the market. The last time the volatility went this high was in 2001.com, but even in 2008, it was much worse than that. And the more I studied about the crisis, I realized that it is a failure of corporate governance to a lot extent. There is greed in the markets, and that greed has been exacerbated by the lack of governance. So post-crisis, all the regulators came together and they built several regulatory frameworks so that the corporate governance is in place, which will probably try to avoid such crisis in future. And that's what led me to go more deep into why or how we can actually avoid such crisis, which led me to study more into corporate governance. Our bank then also developed frameworks, regulatory frameworks, compliance frameworks, to make sure that we follow certain principles as a bank, as a fiduciary, so that such crisis can be avoided. And that led me to know more about corporate governance, and slowly over time, it evolved into ESG and understanding the many facets of ESG, which are now very important. in different industries. Now, having said that, I want to share with you one analogy, and I think you will be quite fascinated to know this, because this is something which I came up with after studying the corporate governance issues and principles and framework and connecting the ESG with it. So what I realized is corporate governance is based on three pillars. So one is the transparency. One is the accountability. And the third is the fairness and the security. These three principles of corporate governance, they're like the points of an equilateral triangle. Each are reinforcing each other to build a foundation of a sustainable company. Now, you can draw that analogy with a plant. When you sow a seed, you need right amount of sunlight, you need right amount of water, and you need soil for the plant to really seed to sprout into a plant and grow and give you the fruits. Similarly, transparency is like water. Accountability is like the soil. And the fairness, security is like the sunlight. These three apex of corporate governance creates a sustainable company. And when the business becomes sustainable, the fruits of the business, the profits, that will deliver the social benefits, which will actually make the community, the workers, the stakeholders, the shareholders, the employees, everybody win. And that is what the big companies are doing. Some of the big companies worldwide, in India and everywhere, they are plowing their profits back into the community, into their employees, into their stakeholders to create that sustainability. So this analogy can help us to really build what is more sustainable, be it in terms of business, in terms of various other kind of services you want to offer. So that's my thinking in terms of my understanding and how I developed these framework into my work and what I'm doing now.
Thank you for your inputs. So coming to the next, as an ESG and corporate governance expert, what values do you bring to the table?
Values, this is something which is quite interesting. There are two types of values. One is executable values. When you prepare software, you need coding. You need people to code the software. But you also need to understand what the software will do. Mm-hmm. So you need to have a macro vision. So similarly for ESG and corporate governance, you need some executable skills which will make sure that whatever you're planning to do in terms of ESG and corporate governance, you can do, like financing projects which are sustainable, lending to businesses which create sustainability, making sure that you have the proper communication with the regulatory framework. You have a collaborative effect with the stakeholders of the company. These are soft skills, but executable skills. There is also another set of skills, which I say is the visionary skills. You need both the skill set to bring up your companies or your organization's ESG. The visionary skill set is more macro, more long-term in nature, which will give you where you want to go, the goal, where your executable skill sets will take you. Visionary skill set is having a sense, an integrity of value and purpose. Why are you doing what you're doing? So creating that's a visionary skill. to have that integrity. The second part is to be more conscientious about what you're trying to do, not the buzzwords, not the ticking the box in terms of ESG, but how a particular action will create a sustainable way in which the business will be done. A lot of companies might be thinking, if I follow the framework of ESG, that will be good enough. Yes, that will be good enough, but you have to go beyond that to make sure that you are actually doing what is needed to make it more sustainable in terms of your ESG. So I think that skill set is what I think I can bring to the table in terms of the corporate governance and ESG, to have both the skill set to work in unison, to reach the goal which the company wants to be, to create that. And I think that is very important. And we as managers of different businesses from different industries, it is the onus for us to create that. Then only the future generation can take it to the next level of corporate governance and sustainability.
Thank you so much for your valuable inputs. So coming to the next. What are some of the most remarkable changes you have seen in your field with the changes in technology? And what changes do you expect to see with the advent of IoT, AI, ML, blockchain, big data, and Web 3.0?
Right. Changes in my industry is massive. It's just too much. I'll give you an example. When I started back in 1998 in trading, we used to trade over phone. So, and there will be boxes on our desk where the brokers will shout out prices. And then we have to give our way in terms of what we want to do. And then we'll talk over phone and we'll negotiate. So there will be various contracts from overnight to 5 years, different types of currencies, and different kinds of products. And then we will talk on the phone, discuss, sometimes negotiate. And it takes anything between half an hour to a few hours to come up with a deal. And when you have the deal, you're dealing with another bank. And then once you agree to a price, then you get the details of what the deal is. And then you manually go and check everything from the date where the contract will be executed in future, at what price it will be executed, and what is the level of volatility, what is the premium of the contract. So all these details you have to check manually, and then you have to input in your system. And then after inputting, you have to run the system to see how that new deal have affected your risk. And then you go in the market and see what you need to hedge in the market. So you do one deal, after a few minutes, not few minutes, at that time, maybe 5 minutes, you see the risk, then you go and try to hedge some of it. So it's a very long process. Now this, in the last 20 years, this whole thing happens in few minutes. Everything has been automatized. Everything is straight through processing. So which means we are not on the phone anymore. We have a screen, we have the contracts we can see virtually. And if you want to deal with the contract, we just click a button and boom, you get all the details. You get who your counterpart is. The details go straight into your risk management system and you see how your risk changes. And then every minute, if the market moves, you see whether you're making profit or you're making a loss on the contract. You see the whole portfolio. So it's amazing how the last 2 decades has changed the way trading is done, the way you are managing your risk, the way you're developing your business. Before, what we do as 2 persons on the trading desk, used to take at least 5 people because of the nature of how things were done. Now everything is automatized, everything is straight through. So it's much easier, much more seamless, and you can do a lot more compared to before. So definitely huge change, and this change will keep on going for the better. So efficiency increases, productivity increases. So that's massive. Coming back to your second question, which is how various technology is going to change. Well, it's very, very much a cliche to say that huge changes will happen. However, I want to make sure the viewers understand each and every technology has its own way of changing things. But the combination of different technology like AI, ML, and IoT, the Lollapalooza effect will be huge. No doubt about that. But we tend to forget that technology is just an enabler. The human intelligence is far superior, and you have to use this technology as per your needs. You cannot depend on technology to give you the right answers always. For example, you take ChatGPT and you ask a question. Remember, ChatGPT is based on a certain time in 2021. Any information after that is not coming unless you are paying a premium for that. You ask the same question to Google Bard, you might get different answers. You ask the same question to Microsoft Bing, you might get slightly different. So what I'm trying to say is that these are all good. Definitely it will improve our life, our efficiency, our productivity, as long as we know how to use it. Even for example, blockchain. I would say that the use cases of blockchain is still in progress. They had promise, and it still has a promise, because what it is doing is amazing. But we still want to see use cases of blockchain on a very global basis. What happens with technology is that we tend to see less effect in shorter time, but in longer time frame, the paradigm shifts. In 2030, if we still are talking each other, you will see what we were 10 years ago in 2023. It will be totally different. But 2 years down the line, we won't understand how the technology has affected us. So we have to be very aware of the changes which brings technology. Definitely, it will be much easier to do business. It will be more efficient. It will be more productive. The cost will come down. You will have less physical activity. Right now, if you imagine, we don't go to the bank anymore. Everything is done on the phone. So there will be more mental activity. So which means that unless you are conscious about it, you will have less free time, less me time. But if you can use the technology to your advantage, you will have more of what you want. So we as experienced industry experts, we need to make sure that we don't depend 100% on technology. Yes, we have to use the technology to enable what we want in terms of our personal lives, in terms of professional lives. And we have to use it to that extent where it doesn't use us. That's very important.
Great. Thank you for sharing such knowledge and valuable inputs. We're building a community of industry magnates. The move is meant for cross-pollination of knowledge and building a knowledge-sharing community of corporate giants and industry lead experts. So what are your thoughts about this initiative by Mr. Zishan Pathan, Mr. Heval Mehta, and the whole World Development Corporation team?
Well, Mr. Jishan Patana and Heval Mehta and all of you in the World Direct Development Council is doing a great job. It's fantastic. It's very commendable. And I think this platform in engaging professionals from different industry to cross-pollinate, to network with each other, creating value is excellent. Not only excellent, it is actually creating a massive movement, not only from an Indian context, but I think on a global context, because you're creating the need for people to get into governance, get into better sustainable future. And this is what everybody needs now, where people can communicate to understand the needs for different industries in terms of how sustainable we can make and make it better for our future generation. So really congratulations and keep up the good work. And I'm 100% sure that not only India will benefit, but I think each and every country will benefit from the fruits of your work. So it's really good.
Thank you so much for your kind and inspiring words.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great. It was fantastic conversing with you, and I'm confident that your insights will inspire future leaders. Thank you, Das sir, for joining us today. Wish you all the best for your future endeavors. Moreover, trust that this initiative by Directors Institute unquestionably has expanded the participants' understanding and enriched their minds. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.